Hey, so I am speaking to you from Coral Springs, Florida, where it is beautiful and warm. And being that we had an ice storm last night in Vermont, I'm loving this now. I just got in a little bit ago. For those of you who watched my video last week, my phone is still broken, so I'm hoping this is working and it will come through, and hopefully by next week, hey Susan, I will have a new phone. But until then, we'll see how this goes. So I'm here now for Shabbos. I'm going to be speaking in Lake Worth, Florida, for a high school Shabbaton, and then Saturday night for anybody who's in Florida, I'm going to be speaking for the Lake Worth community at Chabad of Lake Worth, and then heading home on Sunday. So this week is a really powerful message because it gets into the essence of masculine and feminine properties that are so crucial in understanding strengths and even weaknesses, and how masculine and feminine come together and work together. And an overarching idea that I've definitely mentioned before is that the Torah speaks much more about masculine and feminine even than it does about men and women. And generally speaking, men are predominantly masculine in their traits and women are predominantly feminine, but we flip-flop constantly. And both within ourselves, there's a constant back and forth between these traits, and obviously in our relationships with other people. So when it comes to a statement in this week's Torah portion, we're in the Torah portion of Terumah, it says, Makbalot halulaot isha elachota. And it's referring to the tabernacle, and that there were these 50 rings that were held up by 50 corresponding pins, and that this was what was holding up part of the curtain in the tabernacle. And the statement, though, says makbalot halulaot, that there were these corresponding rings, a woman to her sister. That's the language that's used. So in terms of meaning parallel, it's actually referring to a woman to her sister. That's the actual language that's used. A lot of the commentaries explain that this is referring to the fact that there is something feminine about the concept of rings, whereas there's something masculine about the concept of the pins that hold these rings. And this really boils down to the fact that Kabbalah speaks about masculine and feminine very often in terms of lines and circles. And the circle is this idea of the feminine, right? If we think about a circle, everything is equidistant from its center. You know, this idea of being able to multitask and jump all around and yet have it all connect, have it all relate, versus a very intense focus that's more one directional. And again, this is, as much as that's considered masculine, you know, if you're going in for surgery, you better hope that surgeon, man or woman, is in line mode, is completely focused, is not multitasking, is not jumping all over the place, whereas there are other times we need to be in that feminine mode of being able to be doing and handling multiple things at once. And there's actually remarkable, you can Google this, if you look at differences in the eyes between men and women, it actually talks about women having more peripheral vision than men. You know, really this idea that we have eyes in the back of our head, that we can see what's going on all around us. Whereas it says that with men, generally their eyes are much more intensively able to see far distances and focus in one area. So just one other really interesting thought related to that. So we have this statement talking about these lines and these pins that work together and are corresponding to each other, which is actually the first time the root Kabbalah is used in the Torah. Generally, we think about Kabbalah as receiving, because kibel is to receive, but it actually, in its original usage, refers to being able to correspond, having correspondences. So when we look at the way a traditional Ashkenazic wedding ceremony happens, we see this beautiful exchange of line of circle, of masculine and feminine, and how we need to work together with both our strengths and our weaknesses. Hi, Sina. And the way we see this is that the groom, it first walks and is the one who's going to come under the chuppah. And there's a whole nother aspect that I can't even get into right now, which relates to the letters and how a human being standing upright is like the letter Vav. It's like this line. And he comes, and that's his dominant characteristic. He's the line, and he stands under the line. The seventh letter, which is the letter Zion, is described as a Vav with a crown on top, with the circle on top. And the bride then comes, and she now circles the groom 7 times, Zion times. Okay, 7 is also Shabbos, the Shabbos queen, the idea of the feminine. So now we have the line and the circle, and then they stand side by side. Okay, and they, by the way, form the 8th letter, which is the Chet, which is a Vav and a Zion. They're connected on top with the idea of godliness above them. We'll get into the letters another time. And at this point, the next part in the wedding ceremony is that he gives her the ring. Okay, so now I'm holding my ring, right? And we use generally a very simple, perfect ring. Our custom in Chabad is we even melt out the gold imprint in the on the inside, so that's completely unblemished and a perfect unified circle. He, now the masculine, is holding the circle, the ring, and the bride accepts it. How? With her forefinger. She puts out her finger, which is now the line. So the woman is now the line, the masculine. The man is now the circle, the feminine, because this is the idea that in order to be married, to come together, we've got to work with our strengths, we've got to work with our weaknesses, we've got to do what's natural, what's not as natural, and have both masculine and feminine dynamics work together. Ring goes on the finger, and this is how the marriage actually takes place. At this point, the wedding contract is read, the ksuba, and traditionally after it's read, it is on a piece of paper such as this. This is what I've been holding this whole time. It's read, and then it's rolled, and then it's given to the bride. So what do we have when it's rolled, which is both the ksuba itself, the marriage contract that is now going to be given to the bride, but also this is reminiscent of the Torah and the Torah scroll. So when we have a scroll, it says specifically with the Torah, it's not a book, there's no beginning, middle, and end, but it's a scroll. The end is wedged in the beginning, and the beginning into the end, which, as we've discussed before, actually ends with the letter Lamed and begins with the letter Beit, which is Lev, which is heart, which is love, which is all what it's all about. But that we have both a line and a circle, so that ultimately our Torah, which is from the root hora'ah, which is lessons, our blueprint for how we are to live our lives, how we connect with our spouse, how we connect within ourselves, how we form healthy and loving and positive and beautiful and powerful relationships with one another, is learning how to tap into to tap into those masculine traits and to tap into those feminine traits, and to have those lines and circles work together alongside one another so that those pins and those rings can hold up the tabernacle. And that is the inner meaning of this verse in the Torah portion of Terumah, Makbolot, Halulaot, Isha Elachota, these rings that are held up by these pins, a woman to her sister. So with that, I hope you have a beautiful Shabbos, and I will be actually in Stamford, Connecticut for a Shabbaton next week, so I may be speaking to you from there if I don't get the video in before I leave for that. And regards from Coral Springs, Florida. Good Shabbos.